The moment my father lifted his wine glass at the Glasshouse Bistro, I knew something was wrong. His smile was too wide, his eyes too bright. I'd given him the small canvas that afternoon, a harbor sunrise I'd painted specifically for him. He'd thank me then, quietly, in the parking lot. But now, surrounded by clients and colleagues, he raised it high. My daughter, everyone. An artist. The table politely applauded. Then he added, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear, art won't feed you, Arya. Time to come back to the real world. Laughter rippled through the group. Someone touched my shoulder sympathetically. My cheeks burned. I stared at my untouched salmon, willing myself not to cry in front of my father's business partners. Across the table, a man I'd barely noticed studied my painting with unusual focus. Victor Hale, my father's partner in Aurora Renewable Energy. He turned the canvas slowly, examining the brushwork, the way light caught the water. May I see your portfolio? He asked quietly, ignoring the conversation flowing around us. My father leaned close, his breath wine-sharp against my ear. Don't embarrass me by showing up. Victor handed me his card anyway. Tomorrow. 10 o'clock. Mercer Row Gallery. I almost didn't go. My father's warning echoed through my restless night. But at 9:45, I stood outside Mercer Row Gallery, my portfolio bag heavy against my shoulder. The building was beautiful, all white walls and morning light pouring through tall windows. Victor met me at the door, professional and direct. No pity in his eyes, just focus. He walked me through 3 rooms, pausing at certain walls, measuring spaces with his hands. I showed him 12 pieces. He selected 3 without hesitation. I want these for the east wall, he said. Trial feature. 4 weeks. Standard commission, payment up front for the installation. My hands trembled as he slid the contract across his desk. Real terms. Fair terms. Not a favor, not charity. Business. There's something you should know, Victor said as I signed. Your father called me at 6 this morning. He asked me to cancel this meeting. He said you weren't serious about your work, that I'd be wasting gallery space. I looked up sharply. Victor's expression was calm but firm. I told him I make my own decisions about art, he continued. These pieces speak for themselves. Your father's opinion is irrelevant here. I signed my name, my signature steadier than I'd expected. The eviction notice was taped to my apartment door when I returned that evening. Bright orange paper, impossible to miss. My stomach dropped as I read the formal language about lease violations and termination of tenancy. My father had co-signed my lease 2 years ago. I'd been paying rent on time every month since. Now, apparently, he'd invoked some clause I'd never noticed. I had 30 days. I called him. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. By midnight, I'd packed 3 boxes of canvases and called my friend Jules, who shared a co-op studio space across town. By dawn, 5 painter friends helped me move everything out. We worked in silence, understanding without explanation. Artists knew about unstable ground. The co-op was cramped but functional. My corner had decent north light. Jules brought coffee and said nothing about the tears I couldn't quite hide. My phone buzzed around 2 in the morning. A message from a blocked number. If you want to know why your father hates your art, ask him about the Aurora logo. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Then I pulled out my old sketchbooks, the ones from high school, and started searching. The sunburst motif was in my junior year sketchbook. I'd drawn it for a class project about renewable energy, back when I still thought my father might be proud of my work. Radiating lines, geometric precision, a sense of motion and light. I pulled up Aurora Renewable's website on my laptop. Their logo filled the screen. Corporate. Professional. Expensive looking. Identical to my 16-year-old sketch. I overlaid the images on my screen, my heart pounding. The angles matched perfectly. The proportions were exact. Even the small flourish at the bottom left corner, my signature touch, was there. My father's company had launched 5 years ago. I'd drawn this 7 years ago, shown it to him proudly. He'd said it was nice and suggested I focus on more practical subjects. My hands shook as I photographed the comparison and emailed it to Victor. Subject line, "Can we talk?" His response came in minutes, even though it was 3 in the morning. "Come in first thing. I need to show you something." I didn't sleep. I sat in my corner of the co-op studio, staring at that sunburst sketch, trying to remember my father's face when I'd first shown it to him. He'd smiled. I remembered that now. He'd smiled. Victor was already at Mercer Row when I arrived at 8. He led me to his private office and pulled out a manila folder marked Compliance, Artist Contracts. Inside was a flagged memo from 3 months ago. My name was highlighted in yellow. Aria Ellis represents a conflict of interest for Mercer Row Gallery, it read. Her work, while technically proficient, poses liability concerns due to family business connections with Aurora Renewable Energy. Recommendation: decline representation. The signature at the bottom was my father's assistant's name, but the handwriting on the notes was my father's. I ignored it. Victor said simply, "Your work is exceptional. Whatever issue your father has, it's his problem, not mine." I was still processing this when someone knocked on Victor's door. A courier handed him a thick envelope. Victor's face darkened as he read the contents. "Cease and desist," he said quietly, passing me the letter. "Aurora Renewable Energy claims your upcoming series title, Hands That Built the Light, infringes on their brand identity." I read the legal language, barely comprehending. My father was threatening to sue me for painting pictures of workers. "What do we do?" I asked. Victor smiled grimly. "We get creative." I renamed the series that same afternoon. Portraits of Labor. Simple. Unassailable. True. But as I sketched, the concept deepened into something more meaningful than a legal dodge. I started visiting the gates outside my father's factory at shift change. Workers streamed out, tired and dignified. I asked permission to photograph their hands. Calloused palms. Paint-stained fingers. Scarred knuckles. Hands that actually built the solar panels my father's company sold for premium prices. The portraits grew from that truth. Not revenge art. Not spite. Just witnesses. My cousin Naomi called while I was sketching hand studies. She was a junior attorney at a small firm, scrappy and sharp. "I heard about the cease and desist," she said without preamble. "I've been doing some digging. Can I come by?" "Always," I said. She arrived an hour later with a shoebox under her arm. Her expression was grim. "You're not going to like this," she warned, setting the box on my work table. Inside were letters. Official letters. Scholarship offers from 3 different art schools. Full rides. All addressed to me, all dated from when I was 17. All marked declined in my father's handwriting. I'd never seen these letters. Never knew they existed. I'd applied to art schools on my teacher's recommendation, then assumed I wasn't good enough when I never heard back. "I found them in your mother's attic," Naomi said quietly. I was helping her look for old tax documents. "She doesn't know I took these." My hands trembled as I read offer after offer. Schools I'd dreamed about. Opportunities that could have changed everything. My father had signed for me, writing declined, as if he had the right. I drove to my mother's house that evening. She was in the garden, pruning roses in the fading light. When I showed her the letters, her face crumpled. "He said the art world would eat you alive," she whispered. "He said he was protecting you from disappointment and poverty." And I pressed, knowing there was more. She couldn't meet my eyes. And he said he needed your design. For the company. That you were too young to understand its value, that family assets should stay in the family. Family assets. My teenage sketch. My work. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. I was afraid, she said simply. I still am. I met my father at a riverside cafe 2 days later. Neutral ground. Public enough to prevent a scene, private enough for honest conversation. He arrived on time, dressed in his usual business casual, looking tired but defiant. He ordered coffee and smiled at me like nothing had happened. Arya, this has gone far enough, he said. The logo is family property. I protected you by using it, gave it professional legitimacy. You should be thanking me. I slid the scholarship letters across the table. His smile froze. Where did you get those? You stole my future, I said quietly. You stole my design, then made sure I couldn't pursue art professionally. You tried to control every option I had. He picked up the letters, his hands unsteady. For a moment, I thought I saw regret flicker across his face. Then his jaw hardened. I gave you a stable life. Opportunities you're too young to appreciate. You gave me nothing I didn't earn myself, I replied. And you took everything you could. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. If you show those paintings at Victor's gallery, I'll make sure no one in this city ever hangs your work again. I have connections. Influence. You have nothing. I stood up, leaving money for my untouched coffee. We'll see, I said. The leaked memo arrived in Victor's inbox the next morning. He forwarded it to me with one line, thought you should see this. It was an internal communication from Aurora Renewables executive team. Subject, Arts Funding Strategy. The relevant paragraph made my stomach turn. Artists are hobbyists seeking validation through corporate sponsorship. Real value is built through engineering and business development. Maintain public arts funding for PR purposes, but recognize the fundamental difference between professional contributions and creative pastimes. My father's assistant had signed it, but the language sounded like my father. Victor called me an hour later. I'm offering you an artist-in-residence position. 6 months. Stipend, studio space here, and full support for your show. I want you weathering this storm on solid ground. I thanked him, overwhelmed. That afternoon, I started moving my work from the co-op to Mercer Roseback Studio. The next day, city inspectors appeared at the co-op, fire code violations, they said. Electrical issues. Structural concerns. The building would need to close for remediation. Jules called me in tears. The violations are fabricated. The landlord said someone made a complaint, triggered an inspection. We have 2 weeks to clear out. My father's influence, reaching further than I'd imagined. The co-op scattered quickly. 15 artists scrambling for new spaces in a city where affordable studios were rare. I felt guilt weighing heavy, knowing this was my father's retaliation for my defiance. Then Maya Brooks called. She ran Northline Gallery across town, smaller than Mercer Row, but with a reputation for discovering emerging artists. Her voice was smooth, professional, carefully neutral. I heard about your situation, she said. I have storage space available. Climate-controlled, secure. You could use it for your work while things settle down. What's the cost? I asked, suspicious of free offers. First refusal on your next series after this one, Maya replied. I think you're going places. I want to be part of that journey. Before I could respond, Victor appeared in my studio doorway. He'd heard my side of the phone conversation. If you sign with her, I'm out, he said flatly. I don't work with artists who play galleries against each other. Maya's voice came through the phone, sweet as poison. Think about it, Arya. Options are valuable. I looked at Victor, then at the contract on my work table, the one that had given me real footing. No thanks, Maya, I said. I'm exactly where I need to be. That evening, I drafted my own contract addendum. Not because I didn't trust Victor, but because I needed to prove to myself that I could stand on my own terms. Reproduction rights stayed with me. Commission structure was spelled out clearly. Exclusivity limited to 18 months for this series only. Fair compensation for speaking events. Written approval required for any use of my work in promotional materials. I showed it to Naomi first. She made 2 small adjustments, then nodded. This is solid. Professional. I brought it to Victor the next morning, nervous but determined. He read it carefully, made a note on one paragraph, then signed without argument. This is good work, he said, not talking about my paintings. You're learning. Maya withdrew her offer the same day. Apparently, she'd expected me to jump at the chance for 2 galleries competing over me. My professionalism had surprised her into retreat. 2 days later, a burner account posted on social media. Someone had cropped one of my old sketches next to the Aurora logo. The caption read, "Local artist Aria Ellis accused of copying corporate design. Who's stealing from whom?" The post got traction quickly. Comments filled with assumptions and accusations. My stomach churned as I watched the narrative twist against me. Naomi called within the hour. I can trace this. Give me 2 days. Naomi worked fast. The burner account traced back to an IP address registered to Aurora Renewable Energy's marketing department. Specifically to my father's assistant's computer. She showed me the evidence, prepared to help me blast the truth across social media. But I shook my head. Not like this, I said. If I attack them directly, it looks defensive. We need something cleaner. Victor agreed. An artist talk. Moderated. Professional. You discuss your work, your process, your influences. Let the truth come out naturally, not as an accusation. We scheduled it for 2 weeks out. Victor's gallery, open to the public, with a moderator from the local arts journal. Professional. Unassailable. My father's response came via email to Victor the next day. Cancel the artist talk, or I dissolve our business partnership effective immediately. Aurora will withdraw all funding from current projects. You'll lose 6 figures in committed sponsorship. Choose carefully. Victor forwarded me the email, then called. What do you want me to do? He asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. Victor had given me space, legitimacy, support. Now my father was asking him to choose between his business and his principles. It's your decision, I said. I won't blame you either way. Then it's easy, Victor replied. The talk stays scheduled. Victor sent his response within an hour. Polite, professional, final. I make curatorial decisions based on artistic merit, not external pressure. The artist talk proceeds as planned. If you wish to dissolve our partnership, I understand and will arrange an orderly transition. My father's board called an emergency meeting that same afternoon. The rumor spread quickly through Harborview's business community. Victor's gallery financing was partially tied to Aurora's arts sponsorship program. If my father pulled that funding, Mercer Row could face serious financial strain. The local arts press picked up the story. Gallery owner chooses artist over corporate partnership. The headline made Victor sound noble and possibly foolish. He called me that evening, his voice tired but steady. The board is meeting again tomorrow. They're deciding whether to force the issue, make me choose between Aurora's money and my curatorial independence. I'm sorry, I said. I never meant to put you in this position. You didn't, he replied. Your father did. There's a difference. The next day, Victor sent a formal letter to Aurora Renewable Energy, severing their sponsorship agreement. He cited irreconcilable differences in values and vision. The move cost his gallery significant operating capital. I volunteered immediately to teach paid workshops, anything to help cover the shortfall. Victor accepted, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He'd sacrificed stability for principle. That night, an anonymous email arrived in my inbox. Check the CSR ledgers. Charity funds didn't reach the schools. Naomi was already ahead of me. She'd started digging into Aurora's corporate social responsibility program the moment Victor cut ties. Public records showed generous donations to arts education programs, community workshops, and school supplies. But the actual disbursements told a different story. Look at this, Naomi said, spreading spreadsheets across her desk. Aurora claims they donated $50,000 to Harborview Elementary's arts program. But the school's records show they received $5,000. The rest went to administrative costs and marketing coordination. All internal. She showed me 3 more examples. Same pattern. Big public announcements, small actual contributions, and money recycled back into Aurora's promotional budget. This is fraud, I said quietly. It's creative accounting, Naomi corrected. Legal, barely. Ethical? Absolutely not. I thought about my father's memo, the one calling artists hobbyists. Thought about him using charity programs as a personal PR machine, while people like Jules lost their studio space. We could take this to the media, Naomi suggested carefully. It would bury him. I looked at my upcoming show sketches. The worker portraits. The hands that built the light, while my father claimed credit and profit. Not yet, I said. Let me focus on the work. The truth can wait until after the show. But truth, I was learning, had its own timeline. The artist talk was scheduled for Thursday evening. By Tuesday, I had 60 confirmed RSVPs. By Wednesday, the gallery was at capacity with a waiting list. The press coverage had worked in unexpected ways. People wanted to see the artist who'd sparked a conflict between principle and profit. They wanted to decide for themselves whether my work deserved the fight. I spent Wednesday afternoon at the factory gates again. A worker named Elias approached me, hesitant but determined. He was older, maybe 60, with hands that told stories of decades in manufacturing. I saw the article about you, he said. About the logo. I wanted you to know something. We sat on a bench outside the factory. Elias pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of a woman, young and bright-eyed, holding a sketchbook. Marisol Vega, he said. She worked in Aurora's design department 8 years ago. Freelance contractor. She created the first version of that sunburst design. Your father paid her for 3 months of work, then let her go. She died 2 years ago. Cancer. Never got credit for any of her work. My chest tightened. How do you know this? I was married to her, Elias said simply. I kept her portfolio. I can show you the original sketches. She drew that sunburst first. You refined it. Both of you disappeared from the story. He handed me his first paycheck stub from 8 years ago, with Marisol's name listed as a design consultant. Tell her story, he said. Please. She deserves to be remembered. That night, I added a new wall to my show. The uncredited. Marisol's story. My story. All the hands that built the light while others claimed the glory. By dawn, someone had shattered the gallery's front window. A note was taped to the door, "Stay in your lane." Victor called the police. They filed a report, dusted for fingerprints and shrugged. Vandalism happened. Hard to prove intent. But we both knew. The timing was too precise, the message too clear. Victor hired a security company to monitor the gallery overnight. I worked through the day, preparing for the artist talk, trying to focus on the work instead of the intimidation. Thursday evening arrived. The gallery filled with people, artists, collectors, students, journalists, and curious observers. I stood near my portraits, my hands steady despite my racing heart. The moderator from the Arts Journal asked good questions. I talked about process, inspiration, the workers I'd met. I talked about Marisol Vega, showing her original sketches alongside mine. I talked about labor and value and whose hands we choose to see. The room was silent when I finished. Then a woman in the back row stood up. She was crying. "That's my hands," she said, pointing to one of the portraits. "That's me. I've worked at Aurora for 12 years. Nobody ever painted me before." Applause started, scattered at first, then building. People pulled out their phones. Social media feeds lit up with photos and quotes. The story was spreading beyond Harborview. Then my father walked in. He had a camera crew with him, professional equipment, corporate branding. He smiled at the crowd, comfortable in the spotlight. "Aria," he said warmly, as if we were on good terms. "This is wonderful. I'd like to invite you to paint live at Aurora's community night next month. Show the public how we support local artists." The room fell silent, watching. Waiting to see if I'd accept the olive branch. I looked at my father, then at the camera crew recording our exchange. I understood what he was doing, turning my resistance into a reconciliation story he could control. Using my work to polish his reputation. "No thank you," I said clearly. "But I have a counterproposal." His smile tightened. "Oh? A charity auction," I said. "Run through the Harborview Arts Fund. We donate pieces, collectors bid, and all proceeds go toward apprenticeships for young artists. Real support, not just publicity." Victor stepped forward immediately. "Mercer Row will co-sponsor." The Arts Fund chair was in the audience. She nodded. "We'd be honored to coordinate." My father's camera crew was still recording. He couldn't refuse publicly without looking petty. His jaw clenched. "We'll discuss it," he said, then turned and left with his crew trailing behind. The next morning, the Arts Fund chair called me. Her voice was careful, apologetic. "Aria, we've done some preliminary research. If the funding for this auction originates from misused CSR grants, we legally cannot accept it. The donations would be considered tainted money." "What do you mean?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. She hesitated. "There's an investigation starting into Aurora's charitable giving. If that investigation finds fraud, anything connected to those programs becomes legally complicated. We need clean money only." The CSR investigation. It was moving forward without me, gaining momentum from its own weight. "I understand," I said. "We'll make sure everything is transparent." The media piece dropped 3 days later. A journalist from the Harborview Tribune had been investigating Aurora's CSR program independently. She'd found the same discrepancies Naomi had discovered, plus deeper issues, phantom programs that existed only in press releases, administrative costs that exceeded actual charitable contributions, and a pattern of using community goodwill as a marketing strategy. The headline was damning: Aurora Renewable's dark side, CSR funds diverted to internal marketing. Public response was immediate. Social media exploded with worker testimonies. Former Aurora employees came forward with stories about the gap between the company's public image and internal reality. Local schools confirmed they'd received far less than what Aurora had publicly claimed to donate. Donations poured into the Arts Fund from people who wanted to support authentic programs. Artists offered work for the auction. The event grew from a small fundraiser into a statement. My father's board scheduled an emergency meeting. Rumors said they were considering removing him as CEO. Instead of backing down, he doubled down. His lawyer sent me a letter: "If Ms. Ellis speaks at the charity auction, Aurora Renewable Energy will pursue legal action for defamation, corporate interference, and breach of familial trust." Breach of familial trust. The irony was suffocating. Victor called me immediately after the letter arrived. "You don't have to speak. We can have someone else introduce the pieces. I thought about Marisol, erased from the story. Thought about the workers whose hands built everything while receiving no recognition. Thought about my 16-year-old self, dreaming of art schools she'd never know existed. I'm speaking, I said. I'll be careful with my words, but I'm not hiding. I wrote my speech carefully. No accusations. No naming of names. Just facts and gratitude. Naomi reviewed it. Victor reviewed it. The Arts Fund's lawyer reviewed it. Everyone agreed, nothing actionable, everything true. The auction was scheduled for a Friday evening. By noon that day, every piece had advance bids. The apprenticeship fund was already guaranteed enough money to support 5 students for a year. I arrived early to help with setup. My portraits hung on the walls, simple and honest. Marisol's original sketches were displayed in protective frames, honored at last. The room filled quickly. I saw workers from the factory, students from the community college, and artists I'd never met who'd heard the story and wanted to support the cause. I also saw my mother, sitting in the back row. She caught my eye and nodded slightly. It wasn't approval exactly, but it was acknowledgement. When the auction began, I stood at the microphone and read my speech. I thanked the workers who'd trusted me with their stories. I honored Marisol Vega's memory and contribution. I spoke about the purpose of art, bearing witness, preserving truth, and making visible the people who build our world. I never mentioned my father's name. I didn't need to. Everyone understood. The auction raised enough to fund apprenticeships for an entire year. People stayed after to talk, to share their own stories, to feel part of something honest. Later that night, Victor pulled me aside. Security footage came through from the night of the broken window. The police want you to see it. The footage was grainy but clear enough. A car idled across the street from Mercer Row Gallery around 2 in the morning. Someone got out, threw something at the window, and drove away quickly. The license plate was visible. The car was registered to Aurora Renewable Energy's executive fleet. We can't see the driver's face, the detective explained. But we have the vehicle. Your father would have had access to it that night. Victor had already sent the footage to Aurora's board investigator. It was added to a growing file of intimidation tactics, the co-op inspection, the cease and desist letter, the legal threats, and now property destruction. The pattern was undeniable. 3 days after the auction, my father appeared at my apartment at dawn. I'd moved into a new place, smaller but mine, and I hadn't given him the address. He'd found it anyway. He looked terrible. Unshaven, eyes red, suit wrinkled. He held a folder in his hands. "You win," he said without preamble. "Is that what you wanted?" I stood in my doorway, suddenly exhausted. "I never wanted to win, Dad. I wanted you to respect me." "I have terms," he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "Things I need from you to make this end." "No," I said firmly. "I have terms. And you're going to listen." We sat in my small living room, morning light cutting through the windows. My father looked diminished somehow, his confidence stripped away by public scrutiny and board pressure. I handed him a document I'd prepared with Naomi's help. 4 non-negotiables. First, public credit to Marisol Vega's estate for her contribution to the Aurora logo design. Her name in your company materials, and a financial settlement to her widower. My father's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Second, full restitution to the Arts Fund for the difference between what you claimed to donate and what you actually gave. Plus interest. "That's nearly $200,000, he protested. "That's what integrity costs," I replied. Third, a written policy change at Aurora. Contractors and creative contributors must be credited and compensated fairly. No more erasure. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he stayed silent. Fourth, a formal statement clearing me of any copyright infringement claims. Public. Unambiguous. I slid a pen across the table. My father stared at the document for a long time. His hand trembled as he picked up the pen. "The board is voting tomorrow," he said quietly. "Whether to remove me as CEO or accept a remediation plan. These terms will be part of that plan." "Then you'd better hope they accept it," I said. He signed each page slowly, carefully. When he finished, he looked up at me with something that might have been regret. "I thought I was protecting you," he said. "From failure. From disappointment." "You were protecting yourself," I replied. "From competition. From being wrong." He left without another word. The board vote happened behind closed doors. Victor had a contact on the board who kept him informed. The meeting lasted 6 hours. In the end, they removed my father as CEO. But they accepted his remediation plan as a condition of his severance package. He'd keep his shares but lose operational control. The company would implement the policy changes immediately. The public statement came the next day. Aurora Renewable Energy acknowledged Marisol Vega's design contribution and announced a settlement with her estate. They committed to restoring the Arts Fund with full restitution. They formally retracted any claims against my work. My name was cleared. Marisol's name was honored. The system, for once, worked. Victor called me that afternoon. "I have a proposal. Not just a wall this time. An entire floor. A solo show. Are you ready?" I thought about the journey from that humiliating dinner to this moment. The fear, the anger, the determination. The people who'd helped me and the ones who'd tried to stop me. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." We started planning immediately. The show would be called The Hands That Built the Light. No compromise this time. The title meant what it meant. The auction proceeds and Aurora's restitution seeded a scholarship fund named for Marisol Vega. The announcement went out the same week. Applications flooded in from young artists who needed exactly what I'd needed. Recognition, support, and someone willing to believe in their work. The first cohort was announced within a month. 5 artists, all from working-class backgrounds, all talented and determined. Seeing their names on the website made everything worth it. Opening night arrived on a clear October evening. Mercer Row Gallery transformed into something between a museum and a celebration. My portraits filled the walls, larger than before, more confident. The centerpiece was Marisol's story, her original sketches, my refinements, and the erasure between them. A wall of text explained how creativity gets stolen, who gets credit, and why it matters. Critics came. Collectors came. Workers from the factory came, dressed in their best clothes, proud to see their hands immortalized. Students from the art schools I'd once applied to came, curious about the artist who'd turned rejection into revolution. The room buzzed with conversation, with genuine interest and respect. This wasn't just a show. It was proof that art could matter, could change narratives, could build something beyond aesthetics. My mother stood near the entrance, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She'd sent me a letter the week before, apologizing for her silence, for not protecting me from my father's control. I'd written back, "You're here now. That's what matters." Then I saw him. My father standing in the back corner, unaccompanied by cameras or assistants. Just a man in an ordinary coat, looking at paintings of truth. He didn't approach me. Didn't make a scene. Just stood there, studying each portrait like he was trying to understand something that had been invisible to him before. As the evening wound down, I stood in the center of the room, surrounded by artists and workers and supporters. Victor handed me a microphone. "Thank you all for being here," I said. "For seeing. For caring." The apprentices stood with me on the small platform. 5 young artists who would get their chance, who wouldn't have their futures stolen by dismissal or control. I learned something through all of this, I continued. Kindness isn't weakness. Standing up isn't cruelty. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is refuse to accept less than we deserve. The room erupted in applause. I saw Jules crying, Naomi beaming, Victor nodding with quiet pride. My mother pressed her hands together like a prayer. As people moved toward the exit, my father approached me. Up close, he looked older, worn down by consequences and forced reckoning. I was wrong, he said quietly. Only 3 words, but they cost him everything. I nodded. Not forgiveness, not yet. But acknowledgement. I hope you'll keep going, he said. You're better at this than I ever understood. He left before I could respond. Maybe that was better. Some conversations needed time. The next morning, the Arts Fund director called. There's something you should see. She sent me a receipt copy. An anonymous donation to the Marisol Vega Scholarship Fund, $100,000. The donor had specified that their identity remain private but included one note, for the artists I failed to see. The handwriting was my father's. I showed Victor. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that meant something had shifted in the world. He's not asking for credit, Victor observed. That's growth. It's a start, I agreed. 6 months later, Mercer Row Gallery hosted the second Marisol Vega Scholarship reception. 20 students this time, funded by sales from my show, my father's anonymous donation, and growing public support. The scholarship had become something larger than any of us. A statement that art mattered, that artists deserved support, that the people who built our world deserved to be seen. I taught workshops now, passing forward what I'd learned. Not just painting techniques, but contracts and rights and self-advocacy. How to value your work. How to say no. How to build a life on your own terms. My relationship with my father remained complicated. We met for coffee sometimes, conversations careful and honest. He'd started therapy, he told me. Learning about control and fear and the damage they caused. I can't undo what I did, he said during one of our meetings. But I'm trying to be different going forward. That's all anyone can do, I replied. Victor's gallery thrived. The publicity from our conflict had brought attention, and he'd used it wisely, championing more emerging artists, creating space for voices that needed platforms. My work sold steadily. Not fame exactly, but sustainable success. A life built on my own talent and determination, not on anyone's approval or suppression. On quiet evenings in my studio, I sometimes thought about that dinner at the Glasshouse Bistro. How humiliation had sparked transformation. How rejection had forced me to fight for myself. I kept the small canvas I'd given my father that night. He'd returned it months later with a note, hang this wherever you work. Remember where you started. I did. The harbor sunrise watched over my easel, a reminder that light persists, that morning always comes, and that the hands that build our world deserve to be honored. Not forgiveness without accountability. Not reconciliation without change. But possibility. Always, fiercely, possibility. The art fed me after all. Not just financially, but in every way that mattered. And that, I realized, was the truest revenge, living well, creating honestly, and refusing to disappear. I was Aria Ellis. I was an artist. And I was finally, completely, free. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, share and subscribe.